If you have a situation by 2 months of your earnings cannot pay your house rent, and that's a big issue. So for me, I would say 500,000 naira may not be sufficient. Nigeria is not devoid of smart policies.
Yeah.
What we lack is usually execution. An average Nigerian now live within $800 yearly. That's below $2 per day.
Once upon a time, being middle class in Nigeria meant comfort. Talking about the average family of 5 with a steady job, the father has a decent car, the kids are in good schools, maybe an annual vacation to Dubai or Ghana. I'm sure some of you can relate to those good old days. But today, that same family, we find them substituting for so much, budgeting, and it's almost like, as of today, you can afford it or you can't. The gap between the rich and the poor is seemingly wider than ever as we have it today. And see, on today's episode of Everyday Money Matters, proudly brought to you by Nairametrics, we'll be unpacking one of the economic's biggest questions of our time. Is Nigeria's middle class disappearing? To help us break it down, we've got a seasoned economic analyst right here with us, Mr. Cyrus Ademola. Welcome to the show, Cyrus.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So to even start with, Cyrus, what does it even mean to be middle class, from your perspective as an economist? Is there some percentage of income to be earning or, purchase power? From your perspective, what does it mean to be middle class?
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's not quite straightforward. It's just basically having a livelihood, good wages, high quality job that can make you afford certain life essentials like clothes, food, utilities, and then some extra things for leisure, right? So basically it's about disposable income. How much do you earn and how much the value of what you earn can purchase and what do you have left. So when you have a middle class, you have people who can pay for the house rent, afford good clothes, send their children to good schools and things like that. So it's relative, but it's a class that they are relatively comfortable and they can afford the basic necessity of life. So that's what the middle class would be.
Okay, from what you've said, basically it has to speak with the necessities, but how do you get to, do the hierarchy of, rich, middle, and poor? When does that come into place? Are there certain things a middle class person should be able to, can you please expatiate on that?
So you can look at it from different nomenclature, different categories. For example, the World Bank talked about the poor, those who are living below the poverty line. And these are people who don't have access to shelter, to food, to good schools, to nutrition meals, and things like that. So if you are above that in this part of the world, you can be considered middle class, right? And so, like I said, it's quite relative. You really can't tell for a fact that this is who is a middle class or who is a middle class. But I would say that looking at it from a perspective of global earning, right? Okay, so how much do you earn? And how much do you have left after you've exhausted, your expenses and your bills, right? So I think that would be where I would start from.
So if I'm to hear you correctly, being middle class is like being comfortable, being able to afford your necessities and still having little more to spare.
Absolutely.
If I'm to hear you correctly.
Absolutely.
So would you say, I highlighted during my introduction, that definition applied so about 10 years ago. Would you say, what contrast would you say that's, being the economic elite as of 10 years ago in comparison to now?
Oh, so a lot of things have happened in the economy. And one of the things that have happened is a lot of people have dropped, below the poverty line. And so you have one of the main issue.
Sorry, what is a solution, or what's a poverty line?
Like I said, the poverty line, as defined by the World Bank, as defined by the IMF, even our local economic authorities, is when you cannot afford food, shelter, clothing, and just like we said, the basic necessity of life. Okay. So a lot of people have dropped below that. We have people not being able to afford 2 square meal, let alone 3. And that's quite troubling. Okay. And currently, if you look at our GDP per capita, an average Nigerian now live within $800 yearly. That's below $2 per day. And if you compare it to, say, the average GDP of other emerging economy like South Africa, for example, where people live above $5,000 yearly, which is still relatively small, but compared to $800, it's very, very low. It's very, very low. So what I was trying to say before is one of the things that we see so far in the economy is the erosion of the currency value. And so going up, you and I know, if you have, say, 1,000 naira, 1,000 naira could buy a lot of things, could feed,
absolutely,
an individual, or maybe even a household of 1 or 2. But now you see our children taking 1,000 naira to school. So when you have erosion of your currency, or the value of your currency, you're definitely, putting a blow to the middle class, because it has to do with what you earn. And if you're earning more, but you're spending way more than you're earning, you are most likely going to be below that threshold.
Yeah. Yes, I absolutely get you when you say that, but I'd like you to get a bit more perspective on the figure, because people want to know where they stand as of today. So someone who earns, let's say, 500,000 naira annually in Nigeria, or monthly, I beg your pardon, in Nigeria as of today, would you term that person a middle class, or are they just surviving? I know you already gave, your yardsticks, being able to afford your necessities and having a little more to spare, but could you give some sort of figures to it? And,
So Nigeria as a whole, you have to look from it from a very diverse view. So a person earning 500,000 naira in Lagos, for example, their expenses will be quite different from someone earning 500,000 naira in, say, Abia State. Now, if you go down the line, it's just for someone that's earning 500,000 naira in, say, Kaduna or Zamfara. What I'm trying to say is that cost of living is different in different locations. Of course, there's still some kind of convergence. There's still some kind of things that, are cross-board, but cost of living is different. Lagos, being an urban city, has a very high cost of living. So if you are earning 500,000 naira in Lagos monthly, you may not be qualified as a middle class, because with one of the things we mentioned earlier was be able to exhaust your expenses and then still have something left. And so if you look at things like feeding, let's say a family of 2, 3, or 4, like you mentioned earlier, and then having to pay for school fees, having to pay for house rent, utility bills, electricity, and other things. 500,000 I may not cut it, for you to have something left. So it depends on where you are in the country, and what your expenses are. So if you are living in a remote village, right, you may have 500,000 naira, and then you're living in a very big house, and then you have something to to spare and all. So that is a factor. But another factor would be that what exactly does 500,000 naira worth? What does it worth 10 years ago, and what does it worth today? So if you look at it from that perspective, that's why I said there's a convergence, which is everybody's affected one way or the other.
Absolutely. I absolutely get that. So those of you that you think you are earning half a million and you have arrived. Also, okay.
So for example, now there's a belief that your earning should not be more than your house rent should not be more than 2 months of your earning.
Okay.
So let's say if you're earning 500,000 naira, let's assume net 500,000 naira net. That means you've removed taxes, you've removed pension and other things. So what gets into your account is 500,000 naira, and 1 million would be the 2 months, right? And that should be net. That if you are living comfortably. Now imagine you have what kind of houses can you rent in Lagos?
I was going to say that, because it also has to do with, it's not just, nobody just opts and says, oh, I want to live in a mansion. It's we even have the smallest of houses going for so high. So it's I up to an extent. Do you think that is actually that rule is actually should I say somewhat relative? Except you want someone to go and be living in a kiosk.
No, it's relative based on geography. We are in Lagos, so we can talk about Lagos. So if you look at places like Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and other key cities in the country, houses are quite expensive. And that's based on different factors. And house is one of the necessities of life. It's either you live in a house or you live in the street. You're homeless, right? So house is unaffordable, expensive, something that you cannot avoid, unavoidable expenses. So if you have a situation by 2 months of your earnings cannot pay your house rent, and that's a big issue. So for me, I would say 500,000 naira may not be sufficient if you want to be considered a middle class in Nigeria, or a part of the middle class. And it also speaks to the fact that the middle class gap keep getting smaller and smaller.
I was going to get to
more
that.
Contracted, yes.
I was going to get to that because as of today, thank you, by the way, for giving those parameters, talking about the, should I say, factors you think are contributing, economic factors. You spoke about inflation, you spoke about the depreciation of the naira and, purchase power. Would you say, as of today, we are experiencing some sort of economic erosion because the gap between the rich and the poor keeps broadening? It's like the rich keeps getting richer and the poor keeps, going under. So would you say there's some sort of economic erosion to all of this?
I don't think it's the rich getting richer. Okay. It touches everybody. But there are certain...
trust me, some people the rich are getting richer in Nigeria.
Well, I think when you have an economy that is volatile, right? Okay. That is these... I'll use the word volatile. That is this way, is structured this way. People who have capital, a lot of capital, they can leverage on it, for the limited opportunities that are available. Okay. Right? So let's say a piece of land is going for 100 million naira, right? A rich man can say, okay, I can pay the 100 million naira, and let's say the piece of land is, is meant for maybe to build a business, to build a company. Now, imagine a startup, right? That someone that just wants to start in business, and the total capital they have is like 20 million. So the fact that, access to capital give you more leverage to the limited opportunities and the limited resources that are available. So you could see that, the rich is getting richer because there are limited opportunities, there are limited resources, and only those with capital, could get that. So in that way, you may say, okay, rich getting richer, that's the thing about having economic hardship in a country or economic turmoil in a country. Some people can absorb it because of their financial base, because of their financial fallback. Other people can't. Someone put it this way: if a rich man loses, let's say, a Lamborghini, or maybe he has 3 Lamborghinis and he lost one, right? It ultimately, obviously, it's something that is valuable, with a big asset, but it's not as painful as if a poor man who has one car, let's say someone that's relatively comfortable, has one car, and he loses that one car. That's a big headache for
devastating.
him. That's devastating. So limited resources means that there is a lot of bid, and the person with the bigger money, the bigger capital, the bigger pocket, will take a share of it. Okay. So what has happened over the years is that there is a widespread of equal opportunities before. If you come from a, let's say, poor background, you could get education, right? Get certain degrees, learn a skill, and then try to leverage that skill in the marketplace, get a job, start a life. But as things went by, things became more difficult. And so it's not easy. I was talking to someone that day, and one of the things I found out, we have what I call a WhatsApp market economy, right? Where every graduate is selling something on WhatsApp, which is quite fascinating, right? Yeah. But that is not the way an economy is supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Because not everybody has the financial base to start up something. Not everybody has that kind of capacity. And even as a young person in your 20s, in your 30s, you're supposed to start learning, being absorbed into a big work culture, a big work environment where you can learn, get more skill, and get more education, get more exposure. and then build your experience and portfolio from there. Your role is not to go and start a job, to start a company, But like I said, it's become more difficult for people who don't earn or who don't have that financial base, to leverage on the economy. Of course, the rich will always find a way. And so it may not be they get richer, but it's that because of the limited opportunities, they can capitalize on it and then make something more of it.
Absolutely. Thanks for shedding light to that. And if you recall, I did mention that a lot of people, due to this shift, in social class, let's call it economic social class, a lot of people have been having to downsize.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm talking about the early 2000s, you could literally see everyone going on holidays. I mean, holidays wasn't even a big deal. Your dad could even be earning, let's say, like 100,000, and you guys could afford to go on holidays, like summer holidays, Christmas holidays. And now we've started to see, or we've begun to see families downsizing in expenses. So would you say, or some even relocating abroad, or to countries where they feel the economy is a bit more stable? So would you say this migration is somewhat causing a death to the middle class audience, or populace in Nigeria?
Human beings by nature, we are survival driven. And so when you are in a position whereby you feel like your survival is threatened, in this case economically, right? Not like you're going to die, but your ability to earn more, to have high quality job, to have high disposable income is being threatened, then you see things like migration. Yeah. So one of the ways of looking at migration is economic. Most people leave their countries or where their place of birth, even internal migration, like we see that people leave, maybe the northern part of the country to come to the south, or the southern part of the country to come to the cities or things like that. Those are things that you will expect, because people have this evolutionary tendency to move to where they feel more comfortable. And if they are not comfortable in a place where they are, they move. It's who we are as people. Now, does it affect? Does it mean the death of the middle class? Well, or for one, it means erosion of human capital, right? Because what build wealth and what build economy, in itself, is not the natural resources alone.
Yeah,
it's not even the government, or it's not the fact that there's money somewhere. Somebody has to spend that money, and somebody has to allocate that money to the best possible outcome, right? To the best possible value, right? So, but when you have a situation where people are scared of their own existence and are trying to find a better place for themselves, you see a lot of talented, skillful, entrepreneurial people who are migrating, right? Who are living where they are. And what happens is that those people, they go to other places to go succeed. This is not, I would say this is not exclusive to Nigeria, right? In the, I would say the 70s, the 80s, somewhere in the 60s, 70s, there was a lot of inflows of Indians who left their country, and Lebanese. And some of them even found it more comfortable to live in Africa. So we have Indians in Nigeria, Indians in South Africa, Indians in Uganda in the 70s and in the 80s, because their country economy was very, very harsh. And what happened was that they were able to start businesses in those places, right? So we have business, even till today, we still have legacies of business of, Indians workers, Indians steel workers, Indians entrepreneur who built something in this part of the world, in Africa. And when the country economy picked up, they went back to their country. But in terms of opportunity cost, at that time, when they left, it meant that the value, the jobs, the opportunity they could have created in their country, was non-existent. So yeah, when people leave the country, when talented, skillful people, people who felt like there's no job, there's no opportunity. One of the most painful things is that when you are very skillful, when you're very smart, when you have the technical know-how, and you know for a fact that I know this thing, I have this thing, but I can't leverage upon it because my environment is not conducive for me. My environment does not provide such safety net. You have to find somewhere else to go. And absolutely, if you look at it, I saw a report recently that of all immigrants across different region, in different places, Nigerians seems to be the ones that that are prospering the most. In places like the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, and others in the West, because Nigerians value education, for example, which is a very, very critical part of being able to make it in life, and skill and jobs. They don't see themselves as, oh, I can't do this job. So when they leave and they go to other places like, let's say, France or United States, United Kingdom, they're trying to leverage upon that, and they start making it there. These are values and opportunities that could have been well, domesticated here.
Okay.
But you don't see it.
Thank you so much for that. And with that said, would you say there is, from an economic standpoint, of course, would you say there is hope for upward mobility in Nigeria? Because you did establish at the beginning that there is some sort of poverty line that, once you're in middle class and you fall below that, I did mention people having to substitute, or people having, let's say, you used to eat 3 times a day and you were considered middle class. Now you eat once a day, you are no longer middle class.
Yeah.
So would you say there's some sort of hope for upward mobility in Nigeria's economies as of
There's
today?
always going to be hope, right? Hope is,
from your perspective.
Yeah, hope is an imperative. Without hope, we have nothing. That's why we're having these conversations. So it's not that there's not going to be hope, but it's just that would that hope be actualized, in this period of time, in this time span? That would be the word.
Yeah.
So to say there's hope, I'm always careful of the word.
Okay, let me make it easier. If you could somewhat advise policymakers to, should I say, introduce policies to that you think would assist to revive the middle class. What would that be?
Okay, so I won't say that I have the answer in my back pocket. When it comes to Nigeria is not devoid of smart policies.
Yeah.
What we lack is usually execution. But for me, given what I've observed over the years, is I would think what we need, I would say, would be more inflows of high quality jobs. So I mentioned the other time the WhatsApp economy, which is something I just observed. Like, a lot of people are in that space. Or let's say the internet economy, we may use other platforms, right? That young people are trying to sell something to you or whatever. If you have a country that has 40 million young people, right, and about 60-70% of them are educated, they have the skill, they have the willingness to work. What you should be doing as a country is creating that environment and that opportunity to absorb them, right? In the US, for example, you hear things like 40,000 jobs added this month, 50,000 jobs added this month. These are jobs for people to leverage upon. But in Nigeria, you don't hear things like that, because rather than just being added, companies are exiting. So if the government is intentional about job creation, opportunity creation, to absorb the large number of youth that we have, I think, we can say we're stepping in the right direction.
Yes, and even from your perspective, it sounds like Nigerian youths, as Nigerians themselves, they are very, very industrious, and they are very, very resilient people. So let's say in somewhat next 5 years, where do you see the middle class, the people in the quotes called the middle class? What do you...
Well, I would say it depends on what, those in the leadership position, what they do. Okay. Right. It's the country, for me, in the past 10, 15 years, and I'm a very young person, by the way, but for me, in the past 10, 15 years, I've not been in the right direction, to be very honest, right? So we have I would say, some moment of growth, some moment of spurs here and there, but not sustained growth and transformation, which is what is required for a country to go. So in the next 5 years, like it goes back to that word hope. We can only hope, that things turn around. And if that is the case, if that happens, you see a lot of emigration back to the country. People see that they want to return to their country, and you see a lot of, opportunities and jobs. What we need is jobs, more jobs. And when there are more jobs, of course, you see prosperity, because like you said, the Nigerian youth are very resilient and they're willing to work.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been such an insightful session, Cyrus. Thank you so much for illuminating to us the fact that the middle class is not disappearing, apparently. It is evolving, just like you said. It is not disappearing because the middle class does contribute a huge part of the economy. If the middle class shrinks, so does the economy. Thank you so much for spotlighting that to us, Cyrus. And till next episode on Everyday Money Matters, probably brought to you by Naira Metrics.